Hello, this is Gray Hughes of Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Today's video is going to be regarding the Clarkston sighting of Bryan Kohberger afternoon on the same day that he killed Ethan Chapin, Xander Kernodle, Madison Mogan, and Kaylee Gonzalez. For some reason, he went down to Lewiston, Idaho, and then back into Clarkston, Washington, and law enforcement and the investigators were able to find some surveillance footage, and there's even some cast information as well. All right, so let's take a look at that information starting right here. Now, when you're listening to this video, if it starts getting choppy, it has nothing to do with my end. It's something to do with YouTube, because if you refresh the video, it'll play clearly, right? So if you hear it started going, just hit the refresh button and it should sound normal. So what the issue is, I don't know, but YouTube is looking into it. All right, so let's take a look at the sightings. We have at 12:34 p.m., an individual matching, and I'll show this all on the map, an individual matching the description of Kohberger enters the main entrance to Costco. The individual appears to approach the front door from the northeast portion of the parking lot. So here is the Costco, and they say northeast portion. I believe it's this parking lot. Now there's this parking lot over here, but this is the main entrance. And I think the main entrance is just right down below here. And so maybe that's the main door, or even this one over here, but a camera up above was able to determine that he came from the northeast portion of the parking lot. It's a little easier to determine on the Albertsons, but maybe up here somewhere. Don't really know exactly where the camera is. Maybe it's down here. Let's take a look. It looks like that might be a camera right there. Possibly, and maybe that camera is filming out and he came walking from this direction. All right, so let's get back to the timeline here. Then at 12:34:57, an individual matching the description of Kohberger appears to be denied entry into Costco and leaves out the entrance and returns to the northeast section of the parking lot. So from above, he comes out and then he goes back to his car, likely over in this area here. Now, why Kohberger would go into a Costco, everybody knows that if you don't have a card, you can't get in. Now, did he have a card, or he just sort of walked in to try to buy something at a Costco? Maybe he's not familiar with Costco's, I thought he was this genius, but maybe he's not familiar with Costco. And because he was kicked out, maybe he goes to another store later. All right, so this said he was basically denied entrance and exited. And that's at 12:34:57. And then about 3 minutes later, a vehicle matching the description of Vehicle 1 is seen traveling westbound through the Costco parking lot. So looking back at the map here, he's probably over here and then drives this direction, or it could even be back here, but I would imagine it was more up in the front here, west through the parking lot. And then it says at 12:38:12, a vehicle matching the description of Vehicle 1 merges onto 5th Street northbound and immediately turns onto Port Drive towards Walmart. So let's take a look at that. So he drives this direction, turns onto 5th Avenue, and that becomes Port Drive, right? So, I guess this is 5th Avenue, and then it becomes Port Drive, and then he drives up in that direction towards the Walmart parking lot, which is right there. That's the Walmart. And then at 12:42:35, a vehicle matching the description of Vehicle 1 travels westbound on Port Drive, turning north into the Kate's Cup of Joe drive-through lane. So there's like 4 minutes of time missing here. So maybe Kohberger pulled into a parking lot somewhere and a camera just wasn't able to pick him up. But after he leaves here, it doesn't take 4 minutes to get to there, so perhaps he drove up and came into here, maybe parked back in there somewhere, and just isn't picked up on surveillance, and then eventually exits there So again, back here it says a vehicle matching the description of vehicle 1 travels westbound on Port Drive, turning north into the Kate's Cup of Joe. And you can see there's actually 4 minutes of missing time there. And obviously, like I just said, it does not take 4 minutes to drive to right here. But then Kate's Cup of Joe is right here. And let's take a look at that from Street View. Looks just like that. So he pulls in there. And keep in mind, at 12:36, Kohberger's phone pinged in the area, and it was utilizing the same resources that Kate's Cup of Joe utilizes. So whether or not, Kate's Cup of Joe utilizes a specific resource, maybe cell tower, Kohberger's phone also utilized that same cell tower, and then his vehicle pulls in here based on camera footage from this building right over here, the U.S. Chef Store. And then at 12:42:56, continues on the next page, a vehicle matching the description of vehicle 1 performs a U-turn into the U.S. Chef Store parking lot and slowly moves south through the lot. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that means. Does it mean the vehicle drove past Kate's Cup of Joe and did a U-turn up there and then drove slowly through this parking lot? We have seen images here where there are surveillance cameras. Let's see if I go to this one and then look up here. I think that's a camera right there. That is one. I can see it. And there might be another one. It looks like there's one right over here on this side. So one of those two cameras likely picked up Kohberger's white Elantra after it did a U-turn and then drove through the U.S. Chef Store parking lot. Then at 12:43:41, a vehicle matching the description of vehicle 1 continues south through the U.S. Chef Store parking lot until it leaves the frame. Vehicle 1 appears to turn east onto Port Drive as it drives away. So, it's really interesting to get that kind of detail, but it drives south. So if we go up in the air here, and that means it drove this direction through the parking lot and appears to turn onto Port Drive and head east, which is that direction. Turn east on the Port Drive, and you can see right here, again, it turns east on the Port Drive as it drives away. Then about 3 minutes later, at 12:46:36, a vehicle matching the description of vehicle 1 is seen traveling east through the Albertson's parking lot, eventually parking in the upper left corner of the screen behind a pickup truck. Now, when they say the upper left-hand corner of a screen, they're likely talking about the camera, the surveillance footage from Albertson's. The vehicle parks in the upper left-hand portion of that screen, and that is at 12:46:36, and again it parks behind a pickup truck. And so what that would be is the vehicle drove this direction, down like this, and then made its way into the Albertson's parking lot. And then at 12:46:36, like we said, it drives this direction, and then it parks over here somewhere. All right, so here's the Albertsons. Let's go down to Street View in the front. I believe there's 3 cameras. There's one right here. Here appears to be, I guess they might call this the east entrance, even though it seems like the main entrance. There's a camera right there. See that? And then there's another one down here. Right there. So there's 3 cameras in front of Albertson's. And this is another entrance here. So there's only 2 entrances. This one, and they refer to one as the east entrance, and maybe that's what this one is over here. I don't see another entrance into Albertson's. If you come over here, there just doesn't seem to be another one. These are different stores, and there's no door that goes in over here, nor was there a door back in 2022 there. So there's 3 of them, and I believe this is then the east entrance, even though it looks like the main entrance, and then the vehicle would have parked out here somewhere. And then at 12:49:30, an individual matching the description of Kohberger is seen entering Albertson's via the east entrance exit. So I guess this first one at 12:48:55 just sees him heading in that direction. And then at 12:49:30, at the Albertsons, an individual matching the description of Kohberger is seen entering Albertsons via the east entrance exit. Then at 12:56:50, an individual matching the description of Kohberger is seen checking out at the self-checkout, which is interesting. We don't have any footage of that, etc., but they do have him in there. So now they've matched up the vehicle and the cell tower data from the coffee shop to Kohberger. So you have Kohberger, the car, and his phone. And these are all items that they had tracked and observed other pings and images throughout the entire morning, including at 3:26 in the morning, I guess even at 3:02 in the morning, and then 3:26, and then all the different loops around the house. And then it goes back home, and then it shows back up again around 9 in the morning. At 9:12, the vehicle pings at the A&W, and then it's also seen on camera near at the A&W. So when it pings, it just pings in the general area, but there's a camera sighting of it also at 9:12 in the morning. And then obviously the vehicle makes it back home, and then at 10:32 he does the thumbs up picture, and then sometime after that he heads down to Clarkston, Washington. And here we are. That's why we're here right now. So again, at 12:56:50, an individual matching the description of Kohberger is seen checking out at the self-checkout. And then at 12:58:01, an individual matching the description of Kohberger is seen exiting the Albertsons via the east door. So the same way that he came in. So then he turns around and heads out this direction. And maybe it looks something like that, heading back out to his vehicle. So he's heading out in this direction to get back to his vehicle. And then an individual matching the description of Kohberger returns. This is at 12:58:37. So, if you go back up here, it's almost the exact same amount of time, where it's 35 seconds. And then we go to the next one, and this is 36 seconds. So he exits the door, and then an individual matching the description of Kohberger returns to the area where the vehicle matching the description of the vehicle 1 was previously parked. And then at 1:04:16, a vehicle matching the description of vehicle 1 drives south towards the parking lot exit to Bridge Street. So up in the air, it looks like this. I have him parked right around in this area, drives this direction, and then makes its way out to Bridge Street. Now, something interesting about that is that at 1:04:16 is when he's seen, so he likely sat in his car for 5 minutes or so, and then drove away. Now, what he was doing in those 5 minutes, we don't know, but, he purchased something. Maybe it was food. Maybe he drank that. We don't have any idea. I'm sure law enforcement knows exactly what he purchased, because they would just go check out the time that he was there and then match up the receipt, and they would know exactly what he purchased. And then after that, at 1:04, he takes off, and we don't hear from him again. His phone doesn't ping on any towers that we're aware of or anything. But then at 5:32, his phone pings right back over in this area near Johnson, Washington, and then it stays on for 4 minutes, and then it turns off again. It's interesting, because was he, trying to get something on a map in those 4 minutes just to turn it on, and then it seems to have turned off again, and then it only doesn't show back up on the network until about 8:30 the same evening. So from above, just a quick summary of what I just described. The vehicle shows up into this area at 12:34:15-ish. Then he tries to go into the Costco and is denied entry. And then he makes it back to his car. Then he heads this direction. Then once he's here, he heads north and takes too long to get there, 4 minutes or so. So there's some missing time where he must have parked. Then he goes here and then goes to Kate's Cup of Joe, drives in here, and then does a U-turn somewhere. So maybe up here does a U-turn, or maybe right there. But it drives south then through the parking lot. So it does the U-turn at 12:42:56, drives south through the parking lot of the chef store here, and then it's seen leaving the parking lot at 12:43:41, and then it heads this direction. So it doesn't stay here very long, just barely over a minute. Pulls in, does a U-turn, comes around. He's probably, I would imagine when he was driving over here, he pulled over and looked at his phone to see where a local convenience store was, and maybe that's what took about 4 minutes or so. And then he came in here just to turn around, and so then he drives this direction on Port Drive and makes his way down to Albertson's, where he enters, perhaps right here, maybe even this one. Drives over here and he parks behind a pickup truck somewhere over here. Then after that, he gets out of his vehicle, and I believe that's at 12:48:55, and then he enters the building at 12:49:30, and then at 12:56:50 he checks out. Then at 12:58:01 he's leaving, and then he makes his way back to his car at 12:58:37, and then he must have sat in his car for 5 minutes or so, because at 1:04:16 he's right here, and he turns onto Bridge Street. And we don't know where he went after that. After that time, there's 5 hours of missing time. Almost like at that point is where he turned his phone off, and then he just drove around. Now, it might be that there is other cell phone activity. We just aren't aware of it whatsoever. It doesn't show up in any of the documents. It doesn't show up in, they don't have him on camera even, driving around. Now, maybe they do have him on other cameras in this area. We don't know. All right. So that is it for the Clarkston sighting. All right. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. What do you think he was doing? I think he was checking his map out, trying to figure out different things. I'd love to know what he purchased over there at the Albertsons. And did he try to go into Walmart? I mean, it's interesting. Why wouldn't he go into Walmart if he would go into an Albertsons? Albertsons is more food related, so maybe that's why he went into that store. We don't know. All right. So again, thank you all very much for watching. I appreciate you viewing the video. If you could hit that like button for me, I would really appreciate it. And thank you for watching again. And as I always say, everybody, until next time, be safe out there.